In the world of public service, trust is the most valuable currency. Citizens place their faith in elected officials and government employees to build a better nation, one road, one bridge, and one school at a time. But what happens when that trust is broken? An alarming story recently unfolded in Batangas, where a high-ranking engineer from the Department of Public Works and Highways was caught in a daring act of corruption. This was not a simple case of mismanagement. It was an audacious attempt to buy the silence of a public official with a bag full of cash, a move that would ultimately lead to his downfall and expose a deeper rot within the system. The main character in this troubling narrative is a 51-year-old district engineer, identified by the police only as alias Abe. He was a man entrusted with overseeing vital infrastructure projects, the very foundations of community progress. On the other side was the newly elected Batangas 1st District Representative, Leandro Leviste, a young congressman who had promised his constituents that he would champion transparency and accountability. Their paths crossed not in a boardroom to discuss plans for progress, but in a clandestine meeting where the future of public integrity was put to the test. This incident serves as a stark reminder that the battle against corruption is fought not just in legislative halls, but in the quiet corners where greed attempts to flourish. The stage for this dramatic confrontation was set in the historic town of Taal, Batangas. On the evening of Friday, 22nd August 2025, under the cover of fading daylight, the two men were scheduled to meet. Reports from various news outlets placed the time of the incident somewhere between 5 o'clock in the afternoon and 7:45 in the evening, a window of time when the day's work typically winds down. However, for alias Abe, this evening was not about finishing his duties. It was about initiating a corrupt transaction, one he hoped would protect his interests and conceal alleged irregularities. Little did he know that he was not walking into a secret deal, but into a meticulously planned entrapment operation. The event sent shockwaves through the local community and the nation. It is one thing to hear about corruption in abstract terms, but it is another to see a government official, someone paid by taxpayers' money, allegedly attempting to bribe a lawmaker. The engineer, who should have been a guardian of public funds and quality construction, was now at the center of a criminal investigation. His arrest in Poblacion Taal marks a significant moment, a clear signal that even those in positions of power can be held accountable when brave individuals decide to take a stand and say that enough is enough. The reason behind the engineer's desperate gamble was straightforward. He allegedly wanted to stop Congressman Leviste's investigation into questionable government projects. The young representative had been actively scrutinizing several high-value infrastructure works within his district, and his findings were clearly making some people very nervous. To halt this inquiry, alias Abe purportedly offered a substantial sum of money. The amount recovered during the police operation was a staggering 3,126,900 pesos. This was not a small gift or a token of appreciation. It was a brazen attempt to purchase a congressman's silence and derail a legitimate investigation into how public money was being spent. This multi-million peso bribe, however, might only be the tip of the iceberg. Following the successful arrest, Senator Panfilo Lacson, a veteran lawmaker known for his anti-corruption advocacy, took to social media to commend the neophyte congressman. In his post, Senator Lacson revealed a much larger figure. He claimed that the engineer had attempted to entice Representative Leviste with potential kickbacks amounting to a jaw-dropping 360 million pesos from various infrastructure projects. This larger sum suggests that the alleged corruption was not a one-time affair, but a systemic scheme designed to siphon off a massive portion of funds intended for public works. The plan to catch the engineer was a classic entrapment operation, executed with precision by the Calabarzon Regional Police. After alias Abe allegedly made the corrupt offer, Congressman Leviste's camp immediately coordinated with law enforcement authorities. They arranged the meeting in Taal, creating a controlled environment where the transaction could be monitored. The police prepared the bribe money, marking it so it could be easily identified as evidence later on. The congressman played his part, meeting with the engineer as planned, creating the illusion that the illicit deal was proceeding smoothly and that he was willing to accept the payoff. As the meeting concluded, and the engineer allegedly handed over the bag containing the more than 3 million pesos, the police sprang into action. They moved in swiftly to apprehend the suspect, catching him red-handed with the marked money. The operation was a complete success, not just because an arrest was made, but because it was carried out based on the courage and integrity of a public official who refused to be compromised. Alias Abe was taken into custody by the Taal police, his attempt to buy his way out of trouble ending in handcuffs and the prospect of facing serious legal consequences. So, what exactly was Congressman Leviste investigating that prompted such a desperate and illegal response? His focus was on the quality of several crucial flood control projects along the Palico, Binambang, and Pansipit rivers. These projects are vital for the safety and livelihood of thousands of residents in his district, who are often vulnerable to flooding during the rainy season. The congressman had received numerous complaints and had personally inspected the sites, where he observed alarming signs of poor workmanship. The integrity of these structures was not just a matter of contractual obligation, but a matter of public safety. Upon inspection, Congressman Leviste highlighted that the projects appeared to be substandard. He pointed out the use of inferior materials and weak construction methods, which rendered the flood control systems ineffective and in some cases already damaged. He publicly called for the contractors responsible for these flawed projects to undertake the necessary repairs at their own expense, insisting that the government should not pay twice for a job that was not done right the first time. His persistent and vocal demands for accountability were clearly a threat to those who may have profited from cutting corners and using cheaper, low-quality materials. The engineer, alias Abe, as the DPWH district engineer, would have been directly responsible for overseeing these very projects. His role was to ensure that contractors adhered to the specified standards and that the structures built were durable and fit for purpose. The allegations of substandard work fell squarely within his jurisdiction, making him a central figure in any investigation into these irregularities. The attempt to bribe Congressman Leviste can therefore be seen as a desperate act to cover up his own potential negligence, or worse, his complicity in a scheme that defrauded the government and endangered the public. This incident does not exist in a vacuum. It comes at a time when the DPWH as a whole is under intense scrutiny for similar issues across the country. DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan himself has pledged to hold personnel accountable for any substandard projects, acknowledging the need for internal reform. In a separate but related case, another district engineer in Muntinlupa was recently reassigned following graft allegations. These events paint a picture of a systemic problem where accountability is often sidestepped, and where courageous officials like Congressman Leviste are needed to expose the cracks not just in the concrete but in the system itself. The actions of alias Abe constitute serious violations of Philippine law. Following his arrest, authorities have stated that he will face a battery of charges. The primary offense is the violation of Article 212 of the Revised Penal Code, which specifically deals with the corruption of public officials. This law punishes any private person who offers or promises a gift or present to a public officer in exchange for an action or inaction related to their official duties. In this case, the engineer allegedly offered money to make a congressman stop performing his duty to investigate. This act strikes at the very heart of public accountability. Furthermore, the suspect is also set to be charged under Republic Act 3019, more commonly known as the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. This comprehensive law penalizes a wide range of corrupt activities by public officers and those who collude with them. The engineer's alleged attempt to influence a public official through bribery is a textbook example of the kind of behavior this law was designed to prevent and punish. If found guilty, he faces not only significant prison time and hefty fines, but also perpetual disqualification from holding any public office in the future, a fitting consequence for such a grave betrayal of public trust. The case of Congressman Leviste and the DPWH engineer serves as a powerful and inspiring example of why fighting corruption is absolutely essential for the health of a democracy. Corruption is not a victimless crime. When funds for a flood control project are siphoned off, it is the community downstream that suffers when the next typhoon hits. When money for new roads is pocketed, it is the farmers who cannot get their produce to market and the children who have to walk through mud to get to school who pay the price. It erodes public trust, stifles economic development, and perpetuates a cycle of poverty and inequality. Therefore, every act of defiance against corruption, no matter how small or large, is a victory for the Filipino people. It requires courage, integrity, and a steadfast commitment to doing what is right, even when faced with immense pressure or tempting offers. Congressman Leviste's refusal to be bought and his cooperation with the police demonstrate that change is possible. It sends a clear message to those who would exploit their positions for personal gain. You will be caught and you will be held accountable. Upholding integrity in public service is not just a choice. It is a fundamental duty owed to every citizen of the nation.